All right, good evening, folks, and thank you so much for joining us for our EPS Upper School Community Panel. We are excited that you're here this evening, and whether you are attending this program by candlelight or perhaps by the light of your home, depending upon your power situation right now, we are glad that you're here, and we hope that you survived today's very interesting October thunderstorm unscathed and that all is well in your household. We are excited for you to meet members of our community tonight. We are really grateful for the opportunity to, oh, you're gonna meet my dog right now. Hey, Blitzen. Yep, that's him shaking his collar. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Blitzen, for that. Yeah, you can, thank you. So we're excited for you to meet members of our upper school community, and we're excited for you to ask us some questions. You are going to receive the candid answers of students, of faculty, of members of our senior leadership team, and you're going to have an opportunity to really get a feeling for what EPS is all about as a community. And we're hoping that as you go into further events in the admissions process this year, that you'll have a sense of, sort of what you know about the school and can bring that into the other events that you attend. So I will start by introducing myself. My name is Cheryl Miller. I am our Director of Enrollment Management here at Eastside Prep, and you are going to have a chance to meet a lot of folks tonight, but the first thing that I'm going to do, in addition to introducing myself, is share with you that we have a whole team of people that make the wheels turn here at EPS, our faculty and staff. And the folks that I enjoy working with on a day-to-day basis is our admissions team. A lot of them went into tonight and the many events that you'll participate in this admission season, but the one who is most integral in making it happen is my colleague, Miss Katie Nickel. So Katie Nickel, our admissions experience coordinator, where are you out there?
Hi, Cheryl. I'm at home, but also on the LPC patio.
I know, it looks like you're at the LPC. It looks like I'm in the Macaluso Academic Collaborative, TMAC for short, on a sunny day, but I'm actually here in Tacoma right now. So neither of us is on campus, but I think we might have some VIPs introducing themselves in a little bit who actually are on the campus. Ms. Nickel, is there anything that you want us to know before we start the rest of our introductions from a housekeeping purpose, just so that folks are aware of how the evening is going to proceed?
Oh, perfect. So from a housekeeping perspective, this is a panel conversation, so we are ready and excited to answer any questions that you may have. The easiest way to get your questions to us in this format is to submit them through that Q&A chat box. So you're able to do that anonymously if you don't want us to know that you sent in the question about, is our lunch food actually good? Or you can let us know that your name is da-da-da and send your question through, and we'll be sure to answer it for you.
Very nice. So, so thanks for that intro to how the evening is going to work. We are going to be here for an hour and a half total, and then we will let you go. So if you need to depart at any time before the program ends, please don't feel in any way. Oh, yeah, Blitzen, he's letting you know. Don't be cranky about that. Don't feel sad. We will have this community panel available for you to view in its entirety after we are done this evening. So if you want to relive the memories or catch anything that you missed, please go ahead and access it that way. So without further ado, we want you to meet the most important people who are going to be here this evening. Those are our students. You're going to be hearing a lot from them. And so we have them in descending order of class year, I believe. Is that right, Ms. Nickel?
That's right. So we will hear from Piper first.
All right, Piper.
Hello, I'm Piper Hawley. I'm a senior this year. I'm a member of the class of 2021. I have been here since the 5th grade, so this will be my 8th year at EPS. I was asked to sort of talk about some of the clubs that I'm a member of. I'm part of Allies for Equity, and I'm also a co-manager of the FUSER academic team. And right now, one of my favorite classes is International Relations.
Very nice. Thank you, Piper. And we'll kick it over to Ria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ria Bahadur. I am in 10th grade, so I'm class of 2023, and I joined EPS last year, so this is going to be my 2nd year here. And the clubs and activities I'm part of are debate and robotics. And I'm also part of the music club, which is hopefully in the forming. My favorite class this year is calculus and chemistry. I can't decide between the two.
If you had to pick one, maybe just based on the time of day that you take it, what would you say?
I would say calc.
Calc. Okay, there you go. There you go. We'll have to have a math science showdown here in just a moment, I'm sure. Thank you so much, Ria and Sadie.
Hi, my name is Sadie Hale. I'm a sophomore here. I've been here since 6th grade. Some of the clubs and activities I participated in are chamber choir, theater, varsity basketball, student leadership council, and girls empowerment club. And my favorite class from this year is my English class, Shakespeare.
Very cool. Yeah, and Sadie and Ria were both part of one of our campus tours that we did already this year, actually our second tour that we did. So hopefully you all had, if you didn't have a chance to meet them then, you'll have a chance to ask them some great questions now, because we learned a lot from Ria and Sadie when we had them here for the tour. So thank you both for coming back as student ambassadors. We're grateful for that. And we are now going to introduce Sudo Sensei. Where are you, Maz?
Right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sadie, I'm so sad you didn't say my class was your favorite.
Oh,
But that was last year, right?
Yeah, last year.
Now there's a technology showdown.
Yeah. So my name is Masato Sudo. My students call me Sudo Sensei. I'm upper school technology and makerspace manager. I teach web design, programming, and physical meets digital. I'll tell you a bit about physical meets digital later on. The clubs I do is sponsor is APITA, Asian Pacific Islander Desi American, and also another one, Hunt the Wumpus, which is an 80s computer game that we make together with Microsoft. That started last year. We'll probably continue it this year. I joined EPS last year, so this is my second year here. And my favorite class right now is this physical meets digital class. You can see all these wires. My student right now, they're working on COVID-19 projects. I asked them to build something that'll help the school if we return back in hybrid mode. So this one is where they're making a smiley face on a mask. So you could see the person smiling or sad, so they could show their expressions through the mask. So I'm pretty excited about this one. It is kind of working, but I won't bother right now.
That is awesome. That's so cool. So the ability to, so looking at, solving problems that might occur when we go into hybrid mode, and one of them being, how can you tell how somebody feels about your class that day? Hopefully it's a lot of smiles and no frowns,
Yeah.
right, Sudo Sensei?
Right now, there's no frown. It's either just neutral or happy. So.
Okay, I got it. I'm a very positive person, so I can support that. All right, well, thank you so much. And Dr. Ted Scott.
Hey everybody, yeah, I'm Dr. Ted Scott. So I'm a math and science teacher in the upper school. I teach physics and a number of science electives like data science, which is a recent elective we've added to our catalog. I started here in 2017, so this is my 4th year as a teacher, but I have been a parent of an EPS student for many years. My daughter just graduated last year and is off in college. Well, from her bedroom. I also coach cross country and track and field and have been a sponsor of the board game club. And I was asked to pick a favorite class, which is kind of hard for me, but I guess I'm going to go with physics because like Ria, who has a hard time choosing between math and science, I also have a hard time choosing between math and science, but the nice thing about physics is we get a little of each, and there's a lot of hands-on activities that are really fun to teach. Normally, non-COVID times, lots of hands-on.
See, Dr. Scott, I thought you were going to take a position on math v science, but you played it right down the middle, and I appreciate that. And where are you joining us from, Ted?
Oh, that's a good point. I'm here in the physics room at the moment. I decided I might as well give you the full experience by coming into the physics room. And well, it's rather empty, but at least I have all of my equipment and props around to keep me comfortable.
Perfect. So if there are any questions that are posed by our attendees this evening that involve some sort of physics principle, you're going to be able to just go right to it in terms of demonstrating.
Sure, I'm on it. Yes.
Okay, cool. So that might be a challenge in the Q&A. Can you ask a question that either Sudo Sensei or Dr. Scott has to demonstrate using the props they have in their various locations? I love it. Well, cool. Well, thank you both so much for being here as members of our faculty. We know you are very busy doing a lot of prep for all the magic that happens in remote learning. So thank you for taking the time, as well as our students. And of course, I would love to introduce you to my colleagues who are part of the senior leadership team now. Dr. John Stegman.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm John Stegman. I'm the head of upper school. This is my second year at EPS. In addition to being the upper school director, I teach a series of seminars. I'm currently teaching one on Indigenous issues in contemporary Latin America. I'm excited to be working on one next trimester with Mr. Delaney, who's coming up next. And I think I have been a lackluster sponsor of clubs periodically in the past, but I've had the pleasure of working with the Student Leadership Council and also the Business Club to kind of help get that student organization up and running. Having the head of upper school as the club sponsor has its advantages and disadvantages. The latter probably outweigh the former, but you'd have to ask some students about that. I really just fell in love with the school from the moment I visited. It's such a welcoming community, and it's a really intellectually lively place where people are excited about ideas and kind of geek out on all sorts of stuff that's cool to them. And it's a place where you can do that and not be judged for whatever you happen to think is cool. My favorite course in the catalog is probably modern Latin American history. That's my background and my area of scholarly expertise. And I think it's pretty cool that we offer pretty esoteric subjects in as part of our academic program. That means that kids have a lot of choice when they come here in the courses that they put together, and can really craft a school experience that speaks to what they think is neat. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to you, Ms. Miller.
Awesome. And Dr. Simeon, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but just like it's not cool, or it could have its advantages or disadvantages to be the club sponsor and the upper school head. Do you think your two kids who attend EPS would say the same thing about having a dad who works there?
Definitely more disadvantages than advantages.
But you have a 10th and a 7th grader, correct?
That's right. My daughter Ruby is in the 10th grade, and my son William is in the 7th grade.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, Dr. Stegman, and we will turn it over to Mr. Matt Delaney.
Hey folks, I'm Matt Delaney. I'm the Director of Academic Design and Integration, and I am coming to you actually from West Seattle, but my background is of our TMAC amphitheater, and that is where we do our independent study presentations. And so I do a fair amount of work with our independent study program, and our juniors and seniors, when they finish their independent work, have an audience in this forum, and they get to give a public presentation to our community. I am starting my 14th year at EPS. I have a 6th grader at the school right now, so I'm getting to see his remote experience. I also have a 3rd grader who's in Seattle Public Schools, and I'm getting to see her remote experience and compare the two as we move through this COVID time. Currently, I'm teaching a course called Undercover Economics this fall, and then coming up in the winter, I'm teaching a course called The Evolution of Society, and another called Urban Planning in the spring. And I have a strategy for improvement in my life. I spend my time around students like this, who you just heard from, and colleagues like this. I feel like my key to improving in my life is being around really kind, caring, honest, smart people. And that's what I find at EPS.
Well, Mr. Delaney, then I have to disappoint you for our next attendee at tonight's panel. That's Mr. Bart Gumry. I don't know, Bart, are you gonna be able to keep the improvement train rolling over there?
Probably not.
He has encouraged the majority of my improvement in the last 14 years.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bart Gumry. I'm the Associate Head of School for College Counseling and Alumni Relations, which is quite a mouthful. I started here in 2006, so I am entering my 15th year at Eastside Prep, which is really amazing. When I started here, there were 23 students in the upper school, so I have been involved in almost any kind of activity in the upper school you can imagine. Mr. Delaney mentioned Undercover Economics, which is actually my favorite class in the book, despite the fact that it's taught by Mr. Delaney, but I at one time taught it as well. I also teach in our seminar series. One of my outside passions is baseball, so I teach a class called Understanding Baseball Through Statistics. and another one that I'll be running this spring called Understanding Baseball Through Film.
Very cool. Well, Mr. Gumry, I should apologize for saying in any way that you would be a sad note at the end of our introductions here. I kid, and Bart knows it, because I used to spend more time with Mr. Gumry than just about anyone else in my life when we commute together on a daily basis when school is fully in session in person. So I look forward to going back to those days, Mr. Gumry, and we're very glad that you're here this evening, even in the remote fashion. So we have a question that I'm excited about, and this was the first one that was submitted. We will look forward to answering some additional questions and to getting some more of them that you all have out there. But we have from an anonymous asker, they have heard about a lab or studio in the lower part, maybe the basement of the building. Actually, it's right below where this picture is that I'm in right now. Could you go into that a little bit? So I think we have some perfect, just one of the most perfect people to answer that question. So Sudo Sensei, will you kick that one off for us?
Oh, yeah. So in the Tally building, we have a makerspace in our basement. So we have two sections. One section is kind of more protected. It has a huge CNC machine, probably takes about half of my room here. And then we also have a laser cutter, 2 laser cutters, and power tools inside that room. And then outside, we have Prusa printers, 3D printers, about 3 to 4. We just got an order of new mini Prusas as well. And then we also have like an open space with a VR station. So students can develop apps and try VR in that space as well. And sometimes it's used multi-purpose. Sometimes the robotics team uses that space. So that turned into a robotics testing field also. So it's kind of a multi-purpose space.
Very cool.
I don't know if that's the basement they were talking about. There's also TMAC one, right?
My belief is that that's probably what they were talking about. And in addition to that space, we also have a middle school maker space. We also have a stagecraft studio, which has a whole robust set of power equipment tools beyond the CNC and the laser cutter that are in the Sanders Design Lab, the maker space that Mas is referring to. And so there's just a whole bunch of tools all around the campus to accomplish pretty much anything you could want to. Actually, Mas, I want to put you on the spot and ask you about what you were working on in that space while we have been remote. I know you had a big project that you and some other folks did this spring.
Yeah, so technically I didn't use the space, but I knew we weren't going to be able to return to it, and I knew there was going to be a huge demand for face shields around March because nobody was getting face shields, even the hospitals. So I grabbed one of our 3D printers and brought it home with me and started designing a face shield for local hospital workers. And then they loved them, so the demand grew to the point where hospitals in New York were asking for a shield, so I pulled in students. So it was a mix of printing them in my home, the students printing in their house, and then me going into the lab once in a while to use the laser cutter to cut the plastic part of it. And I think we made over 400 shields that went to hospitals around the country.
That's
so that
awesome.
was cool. That was cool.
I know you even outfitted some of our EPS family members, parents and guardians who are medical professionals, which is really awesome. And so definitely want to acknowledge your efforts there. We had mask makers on campus who were making cloth masks for all sorts of medical and non-medical professionals. And I think it's awesome what y'all did, and definitely really want to acknowledge all those folks that are all the first responders, all of the those who are essential workers. We really appreciate everything that folks out there, many of whom who might be here tonight, have done. So we have another question that came through. This is from Tanmay. This is from a student who's applying to EPS, and Tanmay is asking, how do you integrate proofs into your math curriculum? So Dr. Scott, that might be a low-hanging fruit one for you, but students, especially Ria, know you love the calc over there. Anybody else who wants to share about use of proofs in the math curriculum? And Mr. Delaney, if you want to comment on kind of a curricular arc within math too, that'd be great.
Sure. I can start with just kind of in general talking about where proofs land in the math curriculum. I think depending on the question, where a lot of people might expect them to show up is in geometry, which is one of the first math classes in which students are asked to do kind of formal proof logic. But geometry proofs are kind of a different beast from some of the other styles of proofs that we use in some of our curriculum. So in pre-calculus, we've done some proof by induction as a unit, and then we have a course for sort of post-calculus level called Advanced Topics in Mathematics that is partially driven by student interest, but inevitably at least a few of the topics in that class involve formal proofs from different areas of mathematics, whatever areas the students are interested in, whether it's, you know, numerical analysis or cryptography or, you know, algebraic topology or whatever they're interested in. So, but maybe some students can talk about where else they've encountered them in the math curriculum.
Yeah, I feel like there's, so speaking of proofs, so surprisingly enough, I was in Dr. Scott's pre-calc section. And when I used to do a lot of these for trig and for actually with parabolas and stuff, you'd find that proofs are in places that you wouldn't even expect, but they would actually make sense, because I feel like a lot of EPS math is about finding out how you get the formula, where is the logic behind what you do, rather than just understanding what something is and straight up giving an answer. That's kind of the difference between what you would consider to be just math in general, or maybe proofs in one area of it, versus actually spreading that across to other topics. So there's a lot of this, like, so when you learn a topic, you first learn the proof, then you learn the formula, then you learn how to use it, and then after a while you get tested on it. And that's kind of how it gets integrated into the curriculum, at least for pre-calc.
Thanks, Ria. Any other students want to share math proof experience? And Mr. Delaney, anything you want to add broadly from math curriculum?
Well, I think Dr. Scott caught it pretty well. I mean, we have what on paper is a very traditional math sequence in the upper school, moving from algebra, geometry to algebra to pre-calc, to calculus, advanced calc, and then advanced topics like you mentioned. I think what caught me most was listening to Ria and listening to Dr. Scott saying, well, maybe science, maybe math, it's hard for me to decide. And what I take from that is our faculty's ability, and specifically Dr. Scott's ability, to think about the math and how it is applied, right? So he understands the math, but he knows what its use is. He knows what its function is, pun intended, in the context of the scientific fields. Sorry.
Delaney's got his dad jokes tonight.
That was not equal to good humor, Mr. Delaney. It was not a positive addition. You need to subtract some of that humor next time.
I appreciated all of it, Mr. Delaney. It was fantastic. Thank you.
And I love feedback, so just bring it my way and I will, like I said, improve.
So actually, Mr. Delaney, there's another question that I'm gonna ask you to answer first here. Kate is asking, is summer school available for students who want to take a class in the summer to free up their academic year a little, or just focus on one challenging class in depth over a short period of time? So we do not have our own summer school program at EPS currently. That's not something that we are engaged in delivering to students. But Mr. Delaney, I'm wondering if you can speak to this idea of, you know, focusing on one challenging class or project or idea that one wants to work with in depth over a short period of time. I think that might be a good opportunity to talk about independent studies and the independent curriculum generally.
Yeah, so true right now, and we're always in conversation about things like this, but we're not offering anything in the summer now. That doesn't mean that our students aren't taking courses in the summer. I'm teaching a course with our head of school right now and director of strategy, technology, and innovation that's on worldviews, truths, and consequences. And what continually is happening over the course of this first trimester is students are bringing in information, integration points, connection points to some of the summer work they have done. So where we may not offer it, it is certainly being pursued by our students. In the context of the academic year, if we're talking about what we call our independent curriculum, we have two specific opportunities. One is a seminar program, which happens in the course of each academic trimester, so fall, winter, spring, and those run for 6 weeks at a time. They're capped at 6 students and a faculty member. Sometimes we have 2 to 3 faculty members teaching those. I know that Dr. Scott has been engaged in the last year in a seminar on gravitational waves. And then we see our seminars, they are a collegiate type experience, right? An opportunity to discuss the process together. And we see those as a building block or a step toward our independent study program, and then further our senior thesis program. So in the independent study program, students are able to identify a topic, an area, a domain of knowledge that we don't already take on in depth in our academic program, and design with a faculty mentor a 10-week curriculum, which culminates in a presentation, a public presentation to our school community. So is that along the lines of what you were thinking about, Ms. Miller?
Yeah, that is really helpful, because I want to make sure that folks know about that independent curriculum. And I'm wondering if anyone who has experience with the independent curriculum as either a faculty facilitator for, assisting a student with their independent study, or we've talked a little bit about seminar teaching already. Piper, if you want to chime in with any, I don't know if you have any independent study plans, or if you've done some seminars that you want to talk about, that would all be super helpful. So Dr. Scott, I believe you've advised some student independent studies, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I've advised, I don't know, handfuls ever since I got here. When you teach in math and science, there's often a lot of students who are like, I really liked that thing in physics or math, but I'd like to explore this other thing. So I have advised students from quantitative finance, neural networks and machine learning. This year, I'm advising an independent study with a student who's very interested in epidemiology and the mathematics of pandemics. For some reason, he finds that interesting right now. And so one of the things that's so awesome about that too is I am not an expert in epidemiology, but by working with this student, the two of us both grow in that process. And so you can advise someone in an area that's maybe outside your training, because kind of further ahead what they're going to encounter. And yet at the same time, I learn from our students immensely by being a mentor of an independent study project.
Great, thanks, Ted. And Piper, any plans on your end, or any friends that you're cheering on who are going to be doing independent studies this year?
Yes, actually, I am in the process of getting my independent study approved. I will be working with Ms. Lurs this winter on a sort of look into the impact of homelessness on early childhood neurological development, and also exploring policy in the greater Seattle area to see if there are changes that can be made to improve families' lives. So I'm working with Mr. Delaney on that, actually. He helps run independent studies. So I'm very excited. I love that EPS lets us explore what we're fascinated by. Every class I've ever taken here has always really addressed sort of the deeper questions I have about a course. I mean, for example, and one of the reasons I love my international relations class right now is our class got to propose different topics that we would like to look at within the context of the course. So we're moving into a unit that was proposed by a student, which is something that I just love about EPS. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cheryl,
Anyone
can
else?
I add to? Yeah, I have.
Please.
So I am actually doing my first independent study with a student, and it's serious games. So she actually is studying how gaming is used for different topics like therapy, environmental issues, things like that. And at the end, she's going to develop a game based off of what she learned. So I found it really exciting because the student is truly pursuing what they're passionate about. So I don't even have to motivate them. They're already motivated, right? If anything, she's pulling me along and I'm learning a lot of things. So I know it's for the students, but it's really super exciting for faculty as well.
That's great. And you are actively, this independent study is going on right now?
Yes, right now. We're right near the midpoint right now.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna sidebar with you about that, and somebody who I know who's I don't know personally, but somebody who I know who's a thought leader in that area, to see how the student is specifically using their work. But we can geek out on that later together.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other independent study? Yep, we got more.
Cheryl, can I just make one comment wrapping on this? I love to point out in relation to this and our college preparation. I think this is one of the ways in which our students are the most well prepared for moving on to the next level. I had the pleasure of working at other schools previous to coming here, and I think our school kids are uniquely thoughtful about who they are and what they're interested in. And a lot of it has to do with these paths that we allow them to take to really develop their interests. And a lot of high school curriculums, you have to stay pretty tight and narrow to what's designed for you. And I just find that our kids hit the ground running on their college campus with much more direction and much more verve than I've seen in many other cases. So I think that's one thing that I love to talk about, is that it's not just fun and exciting for them while they're here. It really helps shape their direction for the future. And the fact that, you know, it's important to understand that with these independent studies, they have to get up in front of a whole crew of faculty, propose the classes, take feedback on them, often critical feedback that they have to reintegrate into the planning for it. They have to come and give a whole talk about the course after it's done. Our kids really know how to interact in an adult world too, and that makes a huge difference when they start college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been so impressed hearing the students present their independent study work, but knowing everything that went into that as well is it's such a reflection of the earnestness with which they approach their learning, but also, and the intensity, but also the supportiveness of the teachers who are helping them. We got a great question that dovetails with that actually, which is around senior theses and whether that's a requirement for graduation and how far in advance students identify an advisor potentially, what's in it, and so kind of going off of that, what's involved in developing a thesis and writing about it, and how long does the project take. So all of this independent curriculum is optional, and Mr. Delaney can go into a little bit more of the specifics of, you know, how exactly this project works, but really from seminars to independent studies to a senior thesis, all of these things are components that students opt into at EPS. They're not part of required elements of the upper school curriculum.
Right, and so to reiterate, what is so great about this part of the program is it is student fueled, right? When someone opts into something and has that kind of initiative, they're invested. So in our program, 11th graders in their junior spring are able to take their first independent study. And if they have their eyes toward a senior thesis, we want 2 independent studies done, one in the spring of the 11th grade year and one in the fall of the 12th grade year of exceptional quality. And through those first 2 experiences, students are starting to develop deeper relationships with the faculty mentors that they're working with. Initially, students may come to me and ask for a little help finding a mentor. I would say more times than not, though, like similar to what Dr. Scott said a little while ago, they've been introduced to a topic maybe in a cursory way in a course, and then they want to go deeper. And so they know that that's the faculty member they want to go connect with and possibly ask if they can be a mentor. I'm actually we've had 3 incredible senior theses done to this point. And I'm in discussion with 2 of our seniors right now who are proposing to begin theirs this winter. So it takes about 2 terms, the winter and spring term, to bring a thesis together. Our winter term is very much about research methodology. Like, so in the academic discipline, you're proposing an independent study. What are the research methods you need to be aware of, familiar with, facile with? And then during the course of that term, students are working with their mentor to really put together a thesis production plan. And then that manifests, or that happens in the spring. So students complete their thesis, and that can be a 20 to 30 page paper for someone working in the humanities. It's going to look a little bit different if someone's working with a program and coding, right? It's not going to, we look for a somewhat equivalent product. And then I think the most powerful piece of the senior thesis is that it ends with a public presentation at the conclusion of that senior's last year at EPS. And so it provides an opportunity for us to have a window into what they've been working on and how they think. And it also inspires the next group of students in our school, whether a 5th grader or a 6th grader like my son, or one of our 9th graders thinking about, oh my gosh, I could do something like that one day. Thanks, Ms. Miller.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff, and Yeah, I love that potential that comes with being on a campus that has both a middle and an upper school for students to kind of look to the big kids and be like, wow, this is some pretty cool stuff that they've taken on, and just have that exposure so that they can start to be inspired about that. So one question that we just received was around what kinds of work students are doing in language and arts and literature. I know we've talked a lot about some math and science and technology related pieces so far. So I'm wondering if each of the students can share, because every year students are taking courses in literature and in social sciences, are going to be going at least through the junior year. So I'm wondering if everyone can share kind of what are they doing content-wise right now in social science or literature classes, and give just some examples of where they are in the curriculum there.
I can jump in to start. Right now, I am taking 1950s literature. It's a senior class, and we are currently reading Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison.
Awesome.
I adore this book. It's fantastic. I love that our lit classes get to the meat of sort of like, we pull in things from current day, we pull in stuff from the 1950s, obviously, and we sort of look at literature in a really holistic way. I think one of my favorite ways of analyzing something would be using rhetorical analysis. So looking at the way an author has written a text, why they might have written it that way, maybe looking at the rhythm and meter of a poem. Another class that I am currently taking, I'm taking Spanish, advanced Spanish literature. So I'm reading out of this book, and we are currently like analyzing medieval poetry in Spanish, which is so exciting. So that's just a little bit of what I'm doing.
I'm curious, is the Spanish of the medieval era very similar to the Spanish that you've learned with a conversational emphasis in your EPS Spanish classes? Is it same, or is it quite different?
It really depends on the era, but I have to say it includes letters that are not used in current modern day Spanish. So there are some poems that are markedly different where you're like, that requires an actual translation into Spanish, which is funny.
That's super complex. And so you have surpassed the upper school requirement, which is to complete through Spanish 3, and gone on to advanced Spanish courses. Is this the only advanced course that you've taken in Spanish, or are you planning on doing other ones as well?
This is the last advanced course that's offered. I took Spanish 5 is what we call it, but it's language, which is the other advanced class. So I took that last year. This is the last advanced course. So yes.
Awesome. So maxing out your Spanish, including now Spanish literature, very neat. So Sadie, do you want to share with us what you're doing in terms of literature right now, and maybe anything else social science related as well?
Yeah, for sure. So right now my English class is Shakespeare, which I have with the incredible Mr. Duncan. And we are currently reading Hamlet, and we will be reading Twelfth Night later in the trimester. So we've spent the majority of this trimester just working on understanding the text, because Shakespeare can be dense and can be intimidating at first glance without the tools to really dig into it. So we've been watching performances and talking about the language and reading together as a class. And now we're just about to get started writing an essay on Hamlet. So we've been also working on developing our writing skills.
Nice. Well, thanks for giving us more depth. I know you had mentioned earlier that that's your favorite class right now, so appreciate a little bit more depth on where that is right now. Ria.
Yeah, I feel like, so some of the classes I've been taking recently for lit is medieval literature with the fabulous Mr. Keaty. We are reading Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is one of the medieval masterpieces. And again, like Sadie said, it can seem totally intimidating when you don't have the tools to read them, but I feel EPS teachers, and in this case, Mr. Keaty is doing a great job, like helping us really dig in and kind of spearhead into the book without feeling like we don't understand it. And the sense of comprehension is great. In my Spanish class, which is like my foreign language class, I'm doing advanced Spanish conversation with Profe Ferguson. And what we're doing is kind of watching film and extracting main messages out of it, how it really applies to the real world. And there's a lot of this application I see in both my language courses. And for a fun fact, Sadie and I are actually in the same class. So.
Nice. Good to have classmates here this evening. And thank you all for sharing those experiences. Mr. Delaney, I'm wondering if you would want an opportunity to talk about our humanities structure within especially 9th and 10th grade, knowing that we have probably some prospective 9th graders that are here this evening. If you would share a little bit more detail about that.
Yeah, I will. What's great about I think someone referred to them, but I think Dr. Stegman referred to our humanities curriculum as having some esoteric topics. I think that it is well planned in the way that it lets teachers and students drill down in very particular areas. So as a 9th grader coming in, we've just redesigned our 9th grade courses in the last 2 years. So you're going to take more thematically based courses, which lets us range a little bit and draw connections, tighter and deeper connections between English and history. And so in the 9th grade year and the 10th grade year, our English and history courses are paired together. They're trimester long. In the 9th grade year, you're going to look at the opportunity to take a class called perhaps Authority or Connections. And then as you look at the 10th grade year, we're going to look at some more specific geographies. We may be looking at medieval Europe and then expanding out to the rest of the globe to see what that medieval period looked like. Looking at the modern Middle East or modern Africa or modern Asian literature and film is a subject area we take on. So students, I think, have the experience of having more choice and being able to take 6 different pairings, 12 different history and literature courses over the course of their first 2 years. That continues on into our American Studies program, which are a paired American literature and history course. And then we open up to a bunch more choice in political science and economics in the 12th grade year.
Yeah, so, you know, just in terms of the substance of what students are able to interact with during that time, I really appreciate, and you mentioned this, Mr. Delaney, just how taking the emphasis away from, you know, this is literature of a certain time in a certain place exclusively, and really having it be in that thematic emphasis, I think is really helping students to be more thoughtful about the connections that they're making. And Ria and Sadie, since you experienced 9th grade humanities courses from a firsthand perspective last year, anything you want to share from the 9th grade curriculum that was particularly either noteworthy or memorable for you all in terms of the experience of going through the classes?
Sure. I feel like, so I took Connections, Exchange, and Authority in my first, second, and third trimesters respectively. And I found that there was a lot of amazing, like really, really deep connections like Mr. Delaney was talking about between English and history, because in Connections, something I might learn about in literature would be totally applied in where was the history behind that exact work. So you would kind of see the context before you would even have to assume it on your own. So there was an element of inference that you gained through this course and what we call source analysis. And at the same time, you also gained the understanding of why history happened the way it happened. So kind of like the same thing with math, honestly. It's like we're doing proofs for lit and history, or being able to understand where something is coming from and how it applies to today, from the beginning to the end.
Awesome.
Yeah. I would say one thing that I really enjoyed about the 9th grade humanities curriculum was the way that it moved, even though they were separate trimester-based classes, it kind of moved as a year-long curriculum, because all the fall-based classes were modern, like histories. All the winter were a little bit further in the past, and then in the spring it ended with ancient, and it made this sort of year-long arc, even though they were totally different classes about like totally different areas of the globe, and that was definitely satisfying for the 9th grade year.
Sweet. Well, it sounds like it was a great experience, and you made it through as our inaugural class in that curriculum, and it sounds like you had some good experiences as well. So super great to hear it. We have some wonderful questions that are popping up in the Q&A, so I'm going to move on to a couple more. One of them is the question of sports. So we've talked a lot about academics so far, and this question also includes wanting to know more about the social emotional issues. So are sports no cut? and how does Eastside address social emotional issues? So with that question, I'm wondering, students, you touched upon some of the different sports you've been involved in. I know we've got some coaching experience out there as well, but can you talk about what that experience is like being in a no-cut sport, whether it's something, or a no-cut activity, whether it's, you know, something that you're just trying out for the first time or something that you're very experienced in?
I can speak to participating in girls basketball. Last year I played as a freshman. There were only enough girls to field one team, so technically we were all on varsity, but I still say that I was on varsity as a freshman.
You can own that.
Yeah, I own that. One thing that is kind of cool about the no cut policy is that it allows like players of all different skill levels to be working together, and you can like have the opportunity to either learn from or sort of be a mentor to like another student when you're participating in the same activity.
I'm going to jump in here. I was a rower. I started in the 7th grade and had to recently not be part of the team, which was a huge disappointment. I loved being able to get out on the water and the sense of camaraderie and teamwork that being in a boat required. Everyone of all different skill levels was able to get in the boat and learn how to steer, how to be safe on the water. And that no-cut policy really allowed us to sort of get to know each other and work together as a team instead of like figuring out who could go fastest, which is really an amazing part of EPS is the community. And so it just felt like a smaller community within our larger community. And I was part of the team for several years, and I was on the varsity team starting in 8th grade. And that was the greatest part about it, is middle school students and high school students could really interact and get to know one another.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Scott, do you want to add in a coaching perspective?
Sure, yeah. Part of, you heard Sadie talk about how the basketball team was of a certain size. So some of the no-cut policy has actually been more of a necessity in that, oh, well, there's only so many students, trying out to or signing on to be on a sport. So what would be the point of cutting people? Let's let everybody be in the sport. And we've had a few sports where we've just had incredible enthusiasm, and we just addressed that by creating more squads. So for example, the Ultimate Frisbee team last year had 3 different varsity teams to make sure that they all got playing time, and then they rotated who their competitors were. And Ultimate's a pretty popular sport, so there was plenty of competition. The same has been true in boys basketball. Girls volleyball has been pretty large. So it kind of depends on season to season and sport to sport. And in some ways there's, a little bit of competition among the coaches, because you see someone on the basketball court who seems to have a lot of stamina and is a really good runner, and you're like, I'd really like to get them for track and field in the spring, but then they're like, oh, but I'd really rather play tennis. And so, they have a lot of options, and we don't do any arm twisting, but there's definitely, we have a lot of student athletes, but luckily they can all land on a sports team or 2 or 3 if they want to throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. The second part of that question was really around social emotional learning. Social emotional well-being is a big part of what we focus on at EPS. So Dr. Stegman, would you want to frame that for us from the standpoint of our upper school approach in general? I just was on a call with you this morning with our 9th grade parents and guardians, and I thought you did a great job of just talking about how within our advisory program especially, there is this emphasis in really trying to make sure that we're seeing and hearing students and meeting with them where they are and understanding where they are as young people. So John, will you be able to help kind of shed some light on that? And then I'd love to get specific examples from students especially, but also the faculty.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think a lot of times we think of advisory as the place where SEL lives, where social emotional learning lives. And in some ways that's true. I think there are really intentional efforts made to talk about emotions and emotional intelligence and how that relates to other aspects of happiness and satisfaction in life, as well as academic performance. But I think more broadly, our teachers and our families are really interested in living a well-rounded, a well-balanced life, and so we try really hard. To keep in mind how the work that we assign students affects their sleep patterns and their their ability to participate in a wide range of activities, including sports and performing arts and so forth. I'll be the first to admit that's sometimes challenging. You know, we are a pretty high-powered academic school, and life in classes can get hard and can become a lot of work. So we've used the advisory program to really frame conversations around how much work is too much, what kind of work is most impactful on student learning and student growth. How can we use the advisor-advisee relationship to feedback from students to teachers about the way the academic program is affecting their lives and their livelihoods. I think the other piece that's probably important to talk about is related to the way in which we use other parts of this time of the day, which we refer to as the middle band. It's the 40-minute period or so in the middle of the day between second and third block. We use that to do a lot of other work that's related to the advisory program, related to social and emotional well-being and insight. And we try to do that in ways that are really authentic. So for example, right now we're having a lot of conversations and events and programming around the election, and we're trying to use and target some of the conversations that we're having about the way society is constructed, the importance of empathy in conversations around race or conversations around what it means to have a really divisive political rhetoric taking place in the public sphere. How can we as a community maintain civil discourse around potentially charged political topics? So, you know, we try to do I think SEL in many middle school programs is much more sort of proactive and direct instruction on feelings and how to manage emotions. Whereas when we get into the upper school, I think we try to make the learning around those subjects much more authentic and sort of meaningful and tied into students' lived experience. And that happens both within the classroom and their academic experience and within society at large.
To that end, Dr. Stegman, we actually just got a question in the chat. How many free periods do students have in a regular schedule? So thinking about that balance probably inspired that question a little bit. So, so do you mind just answering that?
Sure, it's a great question. We have 8 academic periods. Students take a course load of 6 or 7 classes. So that means that they would have 1 or 2 free periods in a 2-day rotation. One of the most common schedule adjustments that I try to make with students when they get their schedules in the summertime is to balance their schedule so that they have 3 classes and 1 free period on each day, and not 4 on one day and 2 on the other. So that's a real important part of developing a healthy routine at school.
Mm-hmm. And students, I'm wondering if you can chime in just in terms of your social emotional well-being as a student at Eastside Prep, ways that you feel like that's addressed in an overt manner, ways that you feel like that's maybe addressed in more of a subtle and kind of like a through line way. What would you be able to share about that?
I would just say that one of the most subtle, but at the same time, like most important ways that students' social emotional well-being is recognized and sort of affirmed is just by the personal relationships that students form with teachers, either like their advisor, a teacher of the class, or just someone who they interact with in the halls, or well, they used to interact with in the halls. I would definitely say that students and teachers have a close relationship, and to teachers, students aren't just, you know, one of the group. They definitely know them as individuals, and so having those relationships with the teachers can help to sort of take a weight off, I think.
I would say from a socio-emotional perspective, I think it's really great. You can just walk into any teacher's office and approach them about something you might be thinking of or facing, and they will help you, no judgment, no questions asked. And for example, like I went and I talked to Mr. Fierce, who is an awesome history teacher. If you ever meet him, just say hi and talk about Star Wars. He will be very happy. And I told him, hey, I'm having a little trouble learning how to annotate. I think it's taking me a lot of time, but at the same time, I'm losing time with my friends. I'm losing time worrying about other subjects. I'm losing time thinking about my own life, and I might need some help there. And Mr. Fierce concocted a plan with me. He sat me down and explained to me how I could do this well in my first trimester of high school. And we worked together to create this management plan where I was getting a healthy dose of exposure with my work, as well as talking to my parents and family and keeping everything at a great balance. So I feel like teachers here, counselors, and anyone here, any adult or student is really approachable. Just walk up to them and talk, and they will help you. Everyone here is really welcoming, and that's the first thing I felt when I came into EPS.
That's a great example. And one thing you just mentioned, our counselors, we have 3 full-time school counselors at Eastside Prep. And one thing that actually I think has been a benefit of being in our remote program right now is that our counselors are now accessible. There's a common email address that students can email, and that will just go to all the counselors. So whoever is able to, either best address that issue for a student or first address that issue for a student, if it's something that's pretty emergent, they can help with that. And then the other thing is they now have the booking system, so students can be able to, rather than feel like, oh, I need to actually physically walk into a space to approach a counselor, they can just go on that booking system and be able to connect with them that way. So I think it's a very low stakes way of students being able to reach out when they need somebody to chat with about the things that are concerning them, the needs that they might have. So anyone else want to add anything on the social emotional front before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to echo Sadie's comment about creating those personal relationships between faculty and students. I thrive on that. Like, I'm an advisor, and I love getting to get to know students even outside of the classroom. I learned one student was really into Pokemon Go, and I was just starting to play it, and we just really connected on so many different levels and different things. And I think another thing I want to mention that I discovered here is I see my role as advisor as part of a team to support the student. So if there's a student that needs help, a lot of teachers will sometimes mention, oh, this student's struggling, did you know? And we have discussions, and we also bring in the parents. Like, we're a team to help that one student recover or do better. And in the classroom, I sometimes bring in SEL, more subtly, like for the remote learning, one feedback I got was students, their only chance sometimes to interact with each other was in the classroom. So I intentionally created more group activities so they could have those social and emotional connections with each other. So I've been trying to also bring that into the classroom as well.
Appreciate that, Sudo Sensei. Thank you.
Ms. Miller, I would also add really quickly that when we talk about social and emotional well-being, you hear a lot about when students are struggling or when they're not picking up on something, but it's also, as faculty and staff, making sure that we're celebrating those moments when really amazing things are happening in their life too, so that we're creating balance in the feedback that they're getting also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think, part of having a office of well-being and that focus on student well-being, we have a director of student well-being, we've got our school counselors, certainly, and then that also includes our school nurse, of course, for physical health and well-being, but our Equity, Inclusion, and Compassionate Leadership Coordinator and our Experiential Education Coordinator. So folks that are thinking about what are the proactive elements of the program that are going to go into students feeling like they're celebrated and known for who they are, and they also have a chance to experience some things that are going to be meaningful to them. And I know Piper had already mentioned she's part of our Allies in Equity group, and I think Girls Empowerment Club, Sadie, you're part of that. And those are 2 of the groups that, are very much aligned with our equity and inclusion emphasis within the school, and that is part very much of student well-being. So I wanted to branch on to a question that we had about the education beyond the classroom. So it's something that education beyond the classroom looks different right now in this online learning experience than it has heretofore. But the question is, how does that work with the high school curriculum? And maybe if we can share some, from the students and from the faculty, some experiences that you've had, and then kind of what that looks like right now. So if any students have had some on-campus experiences, either through small group meetings or through sports so far, those are some of the things that we're doing in person with one another this year. If you can talk about that aspect of education beyond the classroom right now.
Ms. Miller, I can jump in on the curricular front, and then maybe we hear a little bit from students.
Yeah.
We make any connection we can to this week-long experience that students are going on, and that can be local, domestic, international. There's a bunch of choice packed into the EBC program, and so at points we're not directly connecting to a curriculum, but we are again extending beyond what has happened in our curriculum. So I participated for a few years in a Seattle arts trip, and what we were working on both was welding and glass blowing. So two things we don't actually offer in our program, but we do offer those opportunities once we're able to step out of school. Another example I would give is that I've got, I mentioned in the spring, I'm teaching an urban planning class. And right now the wheels are turning, right? We're going to come back up after COVID and we're going to get back to it and think about the next great things we can do. And I've got this this one urban planning course where I have students who really they connect with it and they want more of it. And so now I'm thinking about, okay, how might we start to travel a little bit? How might we visit some different municipalities so that we can, we know about Seattle already. Can we understand more about Portland? Could we get to Chicago? Could we talk to someone in New York? So one of the great cool things about EBC, and I'm sure the students will tell you more, is that we're able to extend our curriculum in that week.
I was actually on that blacksmithing and welding trip, and it was fantastic. It was a week-long adventure in Seattle. I learned so much. I had never had really any experience with a MIG welder, but by the end, I just loved it. We had all these different scraps, and we got to mess around and put things together. And I mean, obviously, this is not something that you get to do every day. And I came out of it with really awesome projects. I made some stuff for my mom to help her out with paper towel holder or whatever. So it was cool because it wasn't just math or whatever, but I had to use some of those principles to design what I was working on. So I got to pull in stuff that I was interested in and something kind of physical and creative into something more tangible. It was just a really awesome trip. I learned a lot.
And I'm sure all the parents out there are thinking, I need a new paper towel holder. When can this EBC trip run again? What other EBC experiences do folks want to share?
I really appreciate what Piper just said about EBC being an opportunity to do a thing that you would not normally do during your everyday day. My personal favorite EBC experience was my 8th grade trip to Crestone, Colorado, which involved both hiking and appreciating the natural world of Colorado, and also a visit to multiple different spiritual centers in that area. It was sort of tied to our 8th grade history, which is all about world religions. That was both a really cool experience because it was super informative and not something you do every day, but also one of the really great values of EBC is just that it's another time for student bonding and student teacher bonding. Everyone has super fun memories from EBC weeks, and they're just a really great experience all around.
And Dr. Scott, I think you had mentioned in our chat that we have, our back channel chat that we have going on, that you might want to talk a little bit about some EPS experiences that are happening to pair with the online classroom right now.
Yeah, sure. So, as a science teacher, when I knew that we were going to be remote, of course, I was initially pretty disappointed because a lot of what I like to have in my science classes is an active learning environment, hands-on, taking measurements, breaking stuff, fixing stuff, doing science for real. And I've had to rethink how to do that in one of my courses. And in another course, astronomy, which is offered right now, it was like, actually, astronomy works pretty well remotely because I'm not at home at night with the students where I'm wanting them to, say, make observations of the sky. So that can continue. And daytime observations can be made of the sun, and we can, make measurements, model that with math, do the whole science process. But in my geoscience class, which is normally a bunch of hands-on stuff, we, make glaciers, flow them down pipes, do all kinds of stuff like that, build buildings, watch them fall apart on an earthquake shake table. Like, it's very hands-on, but it's also stuff that I really need to control, like the safety of the environment, make sure they're wearing, goggles, all that stuff. And so I had to pivot that class and make sure that I was still asking them to do some of the same kinds of things, wanting them to be able to think with long-term planning rather than just activities that, happen in 60 minutes and are done. So in my geoscience course, I had to put together a kit of a botany experiment that they could do at home. But it's geoscience, it's not botany class, and we're talking about planetary science this year. So I connected Earth and Mars into the course, and I have them planting, a variety of seeds in a Martian soil simulant that comes from a company in Austin, Texas, that is the same supplier for Martian soils that JPL and NASA use for testing their robotics, and then regular Earth soil. So they're comparing growing food crops in both of these types of soils and making measurements, and then in the end they're going to have a nice poster, and we're going to discuss the science in their posters. So most of our science teachers have said, okay, there's some stuff that I have to do on campus because of safety concerns, lab concerns, but there's also stuff that students can do at home. And so they've put together various kits or said, go find this in your kitchen, go find that, and we're all going to do this thing simultaneously to still accomplish the same level of hands-on as much as we can. And so, we're, as teachers, we are definitely innovating in the remote environment, but we have the integrity of our course. We want to feel like this is still a real science course, and so they need to do the same level that we would ask of them if it was in person. Yeah.
I think that is a great, that sentiment I've heard echoed from our faculty time and again throughout this whole experience from March until now, is really trying to distill what is critical and what is important and what is memorable and noteworthy and exciting about a given course, and take that into the remote learning space as best as possible without feeling like there's a dilution of the excitement about the learning. It might just change in terms of the methods that are being used. So Jack had asked a question that I already published earlier, just want to spend a little bit more time on, which is really what does remote learning look like? And so maybe if you can share some experiences that you're having. One thing I'll just share generally is our remote day is 60-minute long classes with 30-minute long breaks between. The idea there is that we're trying to provide time to get off the screen, time for students to be able to use independently, as well as a duration of time which will still allow for meaningful learning without too much screen exposure. So that's the 60 minutes that we have in there. So students, I'm wondering if you can speak to some of the remote learning experiences that you're having, or give some examples of some things that you've done while remote during this time that you feel like were just like maybe memorable in the way that something would have been in a classroom experience as well.
I can say something. I feel like a lot of the remote experience, well, while it was definitely not an expected thing because we didn't expect COVID to happen, I feel like it's been really great, and I've still been learning a lot. And I feel like what everyone does is there's a high level of participation. You've always got your cameras on, and on Teams, you're always doing these amazing interactive activities. So you're almost always in conversation with somebody in a group, and you would utilize Teams to maybe call them in a separate channel and talk to them about what we're doing. And I feel like it's always been so great because there's a lot of interactive learning going on as well as self-directed. So it teaches you a higher level of independence as well. So I really like how that's also an element of online learning, as well as just the fact that you're kind of on your own with the ability to learn and plan your time, but at the same time, you've got the teachers helping you every step of the way. So it's amazing. It's a lot like real school, except of course I miss all my friends and we're not there in person.
So, a different form of independence than what you've had as an EPS student, but something that, still is in keeping with that.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the more unique experiences that has transferred, I guess, to online learning that Piper can relate to is being a part of chamber choir, which is very difficult to sort of envision how an in-person choir would transfer to the online platform. And it doesn't exactly. We've tried to sing over Teams and the lag, it doesn't make it work. But some of the ways that we've worked around it are by using online platforms to record ourselves singing with a track and then put all of our videos and audios together to create a song sung by our choir from, all around the state. And also just participating in different sorts of activities that are sort of trying to simulate what it's like to be in class and joking around together. One really fun activity was we split up into groups and each had to make a parody of a popular song that was about COVID and quarantine. That was a really fun time.
What did you pick, Sadie, for your song or your spoof?
To be honest, I can't remember.
Piper, do you remember yours?
Yes, I was with the altos that we did that last spring, and we did a parody of the song "We Didn't Start the Fire." I don't know if anybody's heard of it.
You've got a Billy Joel fan in me, Piper.
Yep. So we did that. Choir is definitely different online, but I think it is no less fun. We had lots of different opportunities to get technology involved in ways that we wouldn't have if we had just been in a traditional classroom.
Awesome.
So one prototyping exercise I did in my class is to design an eating utensil for people with a disability called arthrogryposis, where they can't move their limbs. And I took advantage of the fact that the kids were home. So I had them get tape to tape up their arms to kind of feel what it's like to have that condition and talk about what the limitations are. And then we did an in-home scavenger hunt and said, okay, you have 5 minutes to grab items to build a utensil to help a person with this disability. So they came with spoons, with straws, with cardboard paper, and for 15 minutes, they tried to prototype with those items. So it was actually kind of cool how in this online learning, yes, there's a lot we can't do, but it actually opens opportunity to do things we couldn't do before when we were in the school. So I found that with this exercise, the students are actually forced to be a lot more creative, right? Well, I'm not going to use this straw as a straw. I'm going to use it for something else. So we're able to, it actually is opening some opportunities as well.
That's great. And innovate wisely is the final part of our mission. So, seeing the way that that's happened both on the students' end and the faculty it's not just been impressive, it's really been heartwarming. And I think one of the things that I really loved this past spring, and Piper, I feel like you were involved in this, or at least we're giving a lot of kudos to students, and Sadie, I'm pretty sure the same thing as well. Folks who were involved in the Fine and Performing Arts Showcase that we did at the end of the year. Can you speak to what it was like to perform or to watch your friends perform online? Or even just maybe going to we have an open mic experience that we host in the upper school. So can folks speak to sort of the performance online piece?
I could speak to it as an observer of some of those amazing things that students and faculty put together, not necessarily as a participant, but I think it's been really interesting to me and heartwarming to me to hear Sadie and Piper talk about choir and hear Sudo Sensei and Dr. Scott talk about science. The performing arts and the sciences were some of the subjects that we had the most kind of difficult time just thinking about, how are we going to do this online, and that's not low-hanging fruit. That's the really hard stuff. And I think it speaks to the sort of culture of the place that we really lean into the hard stuff, and we have used those moments of challenge as inspiration for creativity and innovation. You know, we could very easily put a lecture on a PowerPoint and present that via Teams. But that's not what we've been doing. We've been finding ways to have conversations, to recreate the classroom using channel groups, to do the hands-on stuff that folks were talking about. And, you know, the fact that choir was one of the most memorable experiences of the EPS remote time for these students is really great to hear. You know, in regards to the performing arts stuff that you were referencing last year, Ms. Miller, like that was just amazing. I will not forget where I was when I saw it. I was actually I had to get out of the house, and so I went for a drive with one of my kids, and we stopped in a park up in Redmond, and we sat there and watched people fly remote control planes around the park, and watched on our phones as our students presented all sorts of creative things that they had developed, and it was just wonderful to see. And you know, we're doing that again this year with the middle school play, which is going to be a radio play, and I think going to be really cool because you can put voices together in ways that are much easier than stringing together video of people who are in different places. And so those are the kinds of adaptations we're making, and it's coming out really cool.
Yeah, pretty excited for the Hobbit via radio play. I think that's going to be a pretty awesome experience. And then our upper school play this year is going to be the Laramie Project. And we're pretty excited for the students who will be participating in that. And we mentioned sports being a no-cut experience earlier. We really do encourage for as many students are interested in dedicating their time to be involved in after-school activities like performing arts with respect to the theater plays and musicals. That's an area where we really want to include as many students as possible. So from a wide cast list to lots of opportunities to be part of stagecraft and behind the scenes, there's a lot of ways that students get involved there. So anyone else who wants to chime in on, yes, the coffee house. Piper, please, can you share a little bit about that experience that I mentioned? Well, I think you briefly cut out in your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry, storms.
It happens.
The coffee house is an upper school sort of performance activity thing that has been organized directly by the students. And I have been able to be a part of it every year since the 9th grade. So it was wonderful when the show went on and we were able to host one over the, actually we did two, over the internet this spring. And it was so lovely to be in that space and be able to perform. So the coffee house is a spoken word poetry slam style event. And I love how it sort of illustrates the powerful community that EPS has. It is a really supportive space for everyone to share what they've been working on in terms of like poetry, short stories, written work, performances. I think we've had some hilarious ones, including one where some folks came in with a pumpkin and a turned upside down recycling bin and like did a jam. And I just love the openness and the supportiveness of that space.
That's awesome. And yes, a pumpkin and a turned up recycling bin can a percussion instrument make. So so really cool to hear about your experience as a student with respect to that. So we've got about 10 minutes left in our session. I want to toggle to a bigger picture question about EPS. And then I also want to talk a little bit about a question that just came in about students becoming more familiar with EPS if they aren't part of the community yet. So so with respect to the question, I'm actually just going to go ahead and publish this question EPS has been growing since it was founded, both in number of students and buildings. Is this growth going to continue for the next 4 years? So we are now our current 9th and 10th grade, so the class that Rita and Sadie are part of, as well as the 9th grade class coming up behind them, are both classes of 84 students each. And that's the size that we're targeting for our upper school classes moving forward. So the classes that are 11th and 12th grade are right around 70 each. So Piper is going to be part of our one of our historically smaller classes graduating out this year, but that, you know, roughly 70 sounds really big compared to that 23 that Mr. Gumry mentioned when he came in. So Bart, you've got the long range perspective on EPS. Can you talk about this in terms of, you know, sort of growth at EPS, what that has looked like and what we're planning for the future? Mr. Gumry.
You're muted.
Maybe Mr. Gumry won't be able to figure out how to.
I'm here. Sorry
You're
about
here?
that.
Okay.
Just fumbling with my fingers here. Yeah, no, I would love to talk about it. You know, I think obviously compared to where we started, we've grown immensely. But one of the things that I'm so pleased by is that we have not grown at all. We haven't lost that sense that you've heard from the students tonight of comfort in knowing their teachers, comfort in walking into classrooms and knowing each other, comfort in having really difficult exchanges. It's a small community still. In terms of long-term view, we really are at the number that we want to be. The facility is the right size for where we are right now. So no, we're not going to see any kind of growth relative to what we've seen before. I hope we won't lose, you know, one of the things that came along with this was as a startup, we always had a sense of innovation and a sense of trying new things. And that's the growth that I hope we won't ever lose. I've really been impressed throughout my time here that the people we've brought in to work here have never been kind of satisfied by saying, yeah, let's just do it the way we did it last year. There's a real sense of let's think carefully and strategically about how we can do what we did last year and do it better. And so, you know, that's where our growth is really focused right now, is on, you know, further developing our programs. We didn't expect to develop in certain ways quite so fast, but certainly this has tested our boundaries of innovation as well. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to point towards, Cheryl, but.
No, I think that's great, Bart. Just the idea of, you know, really from an enrollment perspective, from a, you know, physical plant perspective, yeah, we've achieved that growth that we've been looking for, and now it's really making refinements within that program and not losing that spirit of innovation. It's really about continuing to look at what's working best for students. Actually, to that end, well, you know, the people who I'd want to answer this, maybe it's Dr. Stegman and Mr. Delaney, if you can talk about sort of how we're shifting our focus within 11th and 12th grade right now, as far as what the purpose of advising is and how we're thinking about kind of the launch point. So Mr. Gumry, you might have some pieces that you want to talk about with that as well. But if you could talk about that area of innovation, because I think that might be something that these upper school families or applicant families are thinking about. As far as, you know, so what does EPS launch into? What is this preparing students for? I think this is one of the reasons why we're making some shifts in that area.
John, you want to start and I'll jump in, or you want me to start?
Yeah, feel free to go ahead. Why don't you start and then I'll jump in.
Go for it.
Sounds good. I think what Dr. Stegman can talk to advisory in the 11th and 12th grade and speaker series. I'm going to take on some of the academic offerings that we're prototyping right now. So we are really thinking about college and beyond at EPS, right? We've had a parent in the past say it's not just college prep, it's life prep. And so we're asking students in our 11th and 12th grades right now to imagine their future in their 4 years in college and their future as they move out beyond their collegiate experience. Right now, we're prototyping 3 different seminars in our middle band. I spoke to this a little bit earlier in the program. The first is the one I mentioned, Worldviews, Truths, and Consequences. And so that is actually helping students develop a worldview. They're reading Yuval Harari's 21 Lessons for the 21st Century and thinking about his worldview and then starting to construct their own. And then, so we talk a lot about the evolution of our curriculum, right? What Piper is, or Sadie or Ria are experiencing right now is going to be a little bit different from what our students are going to be experiencing 5 and 10 years from now as they get ready for the world that they're going to walk into. The second seminar we've been working on, and Dr. Stegman alluded to this earlier, is focused on methodologies. Like, what are the different things you need to know and understand to enter a particular space? Whether that's like, what is a business plan and how does that work? Or what is the design process and how is that applied? Or what is deep academic research, right? Just to have a concept of what that is. And then finally, Ms. Miller, you and I have yet to do this for the first time, but we're going to take on a seminar called Designing Your Life, based on a book written by some folks at Stanford, helping students really think about beyond. Right? I think that oftentimes, especially as a junior and senior, high school can start to feel a little insular, right? You're starting to get a little itchy for what that next experience is going to be. And we want students to lean into the energy they have for what is next. So we're trying to build as many experiences as we can to move them in that direction. Dr. John?
Yeah, I think part of what we're aiming for with supporting juniors and seniors as they make the transitions that Mr. Delaney was talking about stems from a recognition that they're leaving EPS and going out into the world, college and the world beyond. And part of it stems from a recognition that students at the age of 17 or 18 years have had a very similar academic experience, a very similar school experience for a number of years. You know, our academic classes are about the same length as even middle school courses, and we were very eager to find ways to innovate the school experience for juniors and seniors. Because we think they can handle more independence, we think they can handle more ownership of the choices that go into creating a meaningful experience. So part of what we've done is scale back some of the work we do in advisory, modify other parts of it. That leaves room for students to focus on their college application process and really make the most of that experience. It also enables us to create some new programming that helps students understand things like the way the world works and how they find their place in it. How does one make a career path? How does one learn about the world and the way it functions and come to affect change in it? So those are we're bringing in speakers to talk to juniors and seniors during our middle band this year, and that's pretty cool stuff to hear from people outside of the school walls. We're eager to continue working on the seminars that Mr. Delaney spoke about, and I'm looking forward to doing some of that work with him later this year. And who knows where the future of that lays. We have done a whole bunch of surveying of alternative school models in the high school years, and we have a ton of creative possibilities out there. And I think Mr. Gumry said it pretty well when he said, this has always been a place that doesn't do it the same way year after year, and we're always looking to find what the next frontier is. And I think this is one of those for us. So it's a pretty exciting thing to be a part of.
I know I really enjoyed hearing, just in one of the very first iterations of that, I really enjoyed hearing from EPS community members who had careers well beyond the realm of education before coming to EPS. And one of those was Sudo Sensei. Another was Stephanie Hinson, our school nurse, and another was Ms. Lors, who's one of our college writing coaches and also 7th grade literary thinking faculty member. And so it was cool, even just thinking about, sort of having outside speakers is so enriching, but even hearing from folks that are part of your community in a particular way, and you get to, just discover different sides of them, I think is a really cool piece that's already happened within that programming. So with our time being at the end here, I just want to answer one last question that came through, which is really, how do students figure out and how do families figure out if EPS is right for them? And so Ms. Nichols is going to put up some of the events that we have coming up. You will have an opportunity, in addition to events like these, our community panels, and there are specific ones coming up about all sorts of different things from sports. You can see upper school athletics specifically will be featured on January 13th. If you really loved hearing some about Friday and Performing Arts tonight and you want to hear more, December 16th would be a great one for you. And if you were just excited to really get in depth with technology talk, January 5th is going to be a great day. We'll be coming right back at the beginning of the calendar year that day. That'll be one of our first days back. So I'm really excited for us to be able to talk technology on that evening. So we'll hope to see you for those ones, as well as our Wellbeing, Service, Equity, and Inclusion panel, which is really going to be a broad look at all these different ways that we're supporting students and thinking more broadly about how we pertain to our school community and the greater community. That's going to be on November 10th. So hopefully we'll see you for that one next month. With respect to our admissions activities, in addition to those community panels, I would really encourage folks to participate in our game nights. Some of our student ambassadors, like the ones you've met tonight, will be able to be part of those events, and that's really just about getting together, having fun, playing games, and they will also help with a student-led Q&A. And pretty soon, students will be pushing out to you in a variety of different ways over email, the website, and we'll be promoting these in our events as soon as it's ready. A students to students website that is about connecting your questions directly. So even if you're not in an event like this, but you want to be able to ask questions directly to student ambassadors, we have a small website that's going to be a vehicle for you to be able to do that. So that's about to launch before the end of the month. We're really excited to get that rolled out to you. But the required parts of the application process are going to be integral for your experience as well. Parents and guardians have their interview, and upper school students also have an interview. That is going to be with a member of the faculty or a member of the admissions team or the senior leadership team. So that's a one-on-one conversation. And sometimes students think to themselves, what's that all about? What should I prepare for? What should I be ready to answer? And it sounds trite, but be yourself, because the interviews that we have the most fun with are the ones where students just feel like they can share with us the things that they're genuinely interested in, the things that they're genuinely concerned about or excited about. And that enthusiasm, that geekiness or that nerdiness, that community mindedness, that does come through when students share that with us. So we really look forward to those interviews with you. We'll also have a mock class experience. You will see Mr. Delaney as part of that mock class experience, along with Mr. Hagan, who's our Director of Student Wellbeing, and Mr. Briggs, who's our Director of Strategy, Technology, and Innovation. So the three of them will co-lead. So you'll have a chance to experience what it's like to be in an 18-student class, but then you'll also have a smaller breakout within a channel group, so that you'll have a group of 6 or fewer that you're part of as well for that mock class. So we're excited for you to be able to grapple with some academic content in that experience. So I hope that gives you an overview of what to expect through the rest of the admissions season. When you have questions, please let us know. Contact us at admissions@eastsideprep.org. We will look forward to seeing you at future events. And before we go, I just want to give some major snaps for our students, faculty, and my colleagues who have been here this evening. Thanks to everyone who has been part of this event. We are so grateful for your time. Yeah, here's some snaps out there. Here's some claps out there. It has been an absolute privilege to share this evening with you. And I'm really glad that this content will be shared long beyond this evening, because you've done a fantastic job with these questions. And as always, just being yourselves. I think that you hopefully get a feeling for how much we enjoy being in person with one another from how much we enjoy being on a screen with one another. And we're excited to continue to get to know you better, our prospective students and families, as you go through this process. So Piper, Ria, and Sadie, thank you. Moss and Ted, thank you for being here. And John, Matt, and Bart, thank you for being here. Thanks again to Katie for an awesome job running tonight's event. And for everyone who's out there, thank you for participating. Thanks for taking the time on a rainy, windy fall evening. We're grateful for the opportunity to be here with you. So enjoy the rest of the evening, enjoy the admissions season, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great production, Ms. Miller.